Hi, and welcome to IDG Chit Chat Live for the week of August 31st, 2015. Today we will be talking about last Sunday's Tom Bergeron episode of Who Do You Think You Are? I hope everyone's ready. Hi, everyone. This is Shannon Combs-Bennett, Creative Director for the In-Depth Genealogist. Joining me this evening are Terry, where'd she go? Terry O'Connell, Executive Director, and our special guests, Valerie Eichler-Lair and Catherine Lake Hogan. Welcome, ladies.
Thank
Hi,
you.
thank
Hi.
you.
Very excited to have everyone here this evening. Our publisher, Jen Alford, is having some technical difficulties, so hopefully she will pop back in here soon. Thanks for joining us. We're very excited. We have our very first Canadian on the show.
Yay!
You're a celebrity.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
Prepare to have your brains picked.
That's right.
Perfect.
So, does anybody want to get us started tonight? Does anybody have any oh my God moments they want to share to start the conversation?
Oh, well, you know I always have oh my God moments.
All right, so pick one.
Okay. The main one is when he was at the archives and they brought out this huge just massive fragile book, and the way they lifted it out of the box, it's like I screamed. And that was the one with the marriage contract back to 1659, and so that was my big huge ooh. It was so cool to see that. Yeah,
You know, I think the thing that got me was when they were doing the tree on Ancestry, and Kyle, it was Kyle Bettini.
Kyle Bennett.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he said, this was all done from church records. And I was like, I want church records like that. That's totally not fair.
Yeah, back to, that was, well, I counted up, it was 12 generations. That was another ooh.
Hmm. What about you, Catherine?
You need some French Canadian in your line.
Yeah, no, I don't got any. What about you, Catherine?
Well, for me, I'm familiar with the Filles du Roi because I learned about the Filles du Roi in grade 7 history when we took the history of New France, which was part of the history of Canada. So I'm a little bit more familiar with it. I did think it was really neat that he was able to get back that far, in particular in France, and with the records and with the story of the Civil War there, with the Royal Army and the siege of La Rochelle. With regard to the church records and tracing your French family history through the church records, I know that for Quebec, they didn't start keeping civil records of the birth, marriages, and death until the 1960s.
Oh
So
my God.
when you're tracing your French-Canadian family history, it is, primarily before the mid-1960s, it is the church records. They were the ones that kept track of the baptisms, the marriages, and the burials. Now, sometimes those records will give you, the baptism might give you the date of birth, and the burial might give you the date of death, but not always.
See,
So
I just
that's
come
why-
from a line of heathens. None of my family went to church.
So that's why they could go back that far in Quebec, back to the 9th great grandmother.
Right. I mean, they did make it look pretty easy, and sometimes it is pretty easy like that. My understanding, the problem with the French names is that the French families also had what was called a D name, D-I-T, and that's because, every family, they baptized the boys Joseph. They baptized the girls of Marie, because Mary and Joseph, the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, they were all baptized. So, how many people are going to be named, all that. So, having the same name. So to differentiate between this Joseph, say, Ardian, and or this Pierre Ardien and another Pierre Ardien in New France, which eventually became Quebec, is they took on different names, the deep names. So it would be Pierre Ardien de La Framboise, something to differentiate them. And so as time wore on, coming closer to our time, the first surname would disappear. So he would just then be known as Pierre La Framboise. And so the original family name disappears, and that gets tricky then for people researching back in time. So they think the family name is La Framboise, but in fact it's Ardien. And so what you have to learn in French Canadian family history is what is the original family name. And then once you know the original family name, you can trace it back, and most times you can get it back to France.
And Catherine, would that be from the church records rather than, because the civil records, like you said, start so late, that you get that original, you can get that original from the church records? Right,
sometimes you can. So it depends on, it depends, right? Our most common answer in genealogy, it depends. It depends if it's recorded in the church records, because sometimes that deep name is recorded and sometimes it's not. The other really nice thing about the French Canadian records, and you saw this even in the French records, is that the women are all identified by their maiden names all the time. So when you're searching for your female French ancestors, you're going to be looking for them with their maiden name, not their married name. Even when it comes to the burials.
With the second marriage, she used her maiden name was in that, wasn't it?
In the second marriage, she, they still identified her by her maiden name. Yeah.
So, Catherine, let me ask you this: how often do you know did the Canadian French change their names coming into the States?
So you're breaking up there, Terry. Try that one again.
Sorry. Was it popular for the Canadian French to change their name when they came into America?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I do know. Well, hold on. I do know from doing research with Quebec. One particular family I did, the surname was Menard, and when they migrated out of Quebec and they ended up coming through Ontario, and the family settled in Michigan, they did anglicize the name. So sometimes they would anglicize the name to fit in. So the family name went from Menard, he went from Olivier Menard to Oliver Minor, so that sometimes happened.
Because my ancestor, his name was Hilaire Fontaine, and when he came to America, he was Alexander Springer.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Not even close. Not even sound alike.
Yeah.
I never would have found anything, but I talked to a distant cousin who lived out of state, and it's my dad's cousin, and they have no connection. They didn't see each other as kids. And she actually told me, oh, well, this is the family's original name. And then I found all this stuff that opened it up for me. So I have my Canadian French line all the way back to the 1650s as well. And I'm not even going to attempt the French word, but I do have a king's daughter in my line. So.
Yeah, we're not going to murder the French language tonight because I can do it quite well.
Catherine, you do well with it, though.
Yeah, that's why I could listen to Catherine all night long with the French the French names. It's like, oh, I always wanted to learn French, and of course, no way. I can barely tackle English. So.
Right.
Once again, this is where I say I took German. I have guttural sounds. Nothing floating. But
the tricky thing with the French records is they are in French, and there are some English records in the French records. What I'm talking about in particular is the Drouin collection, and those are available on Ancestry. So when you access them, sometimes it gets really easy to get back very quickly. And so when they did the churches in Quebec, they did include some of the English churches. And so if it was an English church, then those records are in English. But if it's the French Catholic Church, then it is in French. And I used to have up to like grade 10, grade 11 French, and then I stopped using it. So I have rudimentary French. I can make out some things. So learn your months. That's always helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you learn your numbers, your number systems, then you can start. You should be able to pick out the dates. And then there's generally a format that the priests used when they had the clerks write out the records. And as you work through the records, you'll get to recognize what that pattern is, and so you'll understand what the wording is. And it's pretty much the same, whether it's a baptism, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a burial. So in the instance of Marguerite Ardien and when she married Jean Rabouin in Quebec, I did look at their marriage record, and it'll always be the man that's listed first. So it'll give you the date, and then it will always give the man. The man always comes first, and it will give his name, and then sometimes it might name his father, and it'll probably say something like the natural son of. So that gives you an indication of whether or not he's legitimate. And then it'll tell you which parish he's from, and then it'll say, and then I can just pull it up here.
Is that the with Marguerite and John, the 1663 marriage?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be her second marriage.
Her second marriage, right, when they were married in Quebec. So they got married in the Church of Notre Dame in Quebec City. Okay, so here it is. So it has the date, the year of our Lord, so it's L'an de Grâce, and then the date. Actually, now this is a transcription I have. In the original record, the year would be spelled out entirely. Mm-hmm. It would not be numerals. It's spelled out. And then same with the actual day. It would also be spelled out. So if you see, like on Ancestry, the one that I have here, it's actually a transcription. It's not the original, because the year and the day are written in numerals. The original record is going to have those all spelled out. And so what's interesting about their record is they listed the bands and gave the date of the bands when they were read out in the church, and then also the date of the actual marriage. And I'm just looking through here. So lots of flowery language. But what's nice is here, so for Jean Rabouin, it says fille de François Rabouin. So it says son up. So it gives his father's name. And then Marguerite, it looks like Chassé, so his mother's name. And like I told you, with the females, it's always giving their maiden names. So for Jean Rabouin, in this record right here, we have the names of both of his parents, including his mother's maiden name.
Oh my gosh, why can't we have that everywhere?
I know, and this is like 1663. How many of us English-speaking people researching records like in England, were going back that far, you never get the woman's maiden name. Like, you're really digging, Well, the French practically hand it to you on a platter. And then going back to the marriage record here, so for Marguerite Ardien, fille de Pierre Ardien et de Suzanne Soret. So again, confirming exactly what they showed in the television show on Who Do You Think You Are, same thing. And then it'll tell you where they live, and so it says from de la ville de La Rochelle. So we know that, again, that they were from La Rochelle, France. And then, let me just see here. During the marriage, we have the benediction, marriage benediction. I'm looking to see, there we go. And then there's always two witnesses in any of the French records. when it comes to the baptism, whether it's the baptism, the marriage, or a burial, there's always going to be two witnesses. So again, you might want to see who those people are, who the witnesses are. Oftentimes they're relatives.
Mm-hmm. Which is the same thing we go by, or we teach here, doing, well, basically any kind of research. Even in German, I always say the same thing, especially in the United States. So, now I want to go look at that record, and I barely have one screen going. Now, I was going to ask you, it was such a cool, tall building. It almost looked like the church, but that was the National Archives in Quebec City, right? When they were showing him that
They
marriage.
did not show the church.
Right, but the archives looked like a church with tall steeples, that where he met with the archivist there. And that they called it the National Archives, but that would be the provincial archives, correct?
Yes, that was the provincial archives.
Archives, right. Because I'm familiar with the one for Saskatchewan, which would be
In Saskatoon, Regina. Regina.
Yeah. yeah. Blank in the brain cell there. Yeah. I was really excited when it said daughter of the king, and explained that about the imbalance of men and women, and the women, were to immigrate, and they could choose their husbands. And when they did, then they had explained in the show that husband would take care of the children until age 15.
Well, they also said that the women basically could set their own terms, and that she probably stipulated a lot of those. Because if you're in high demand and you can, have whoever you want to pick.
Yeah, it's like, we need that kind of rule here. Anyway, I was going on. But yeah, and then the estate for her, and at the time they did that, it said that she died in a hotel, and I'm thinking, oh, really? But then they explained that hotel also means hospital. There was 7 small children, and at that point in time, the bells were tolling while they were, while they were showing this. Obviously it was being taped at the time, but the bells were tolling. It's like, oh my gosh. Even if I don't have any research, I want to go there. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. As I was doing a little bit of looking into my tree today to get ready for tonight's show, I was reading a compilation that somebody put together on my ancestor that came over from France. And she came 2 years after Marguerite. And it said that they were given, I'm going to say 100 pounds, whatever the money was in France, to come. 60 of it was for their trip, 30 of it was for them to buy clothes, and there was, so it kind of broke down what the money was. But in his story, as he went and told it, my ancestor brought all that money to her marriage. So she didn't spend, so she must have had the money to come. So she brought her 100 pounds, let's say, to her marriage, and he brought 200. So they came together and seemed like that was pretty good off to start with.
That's interesting. I wonder. They didn't go into it in the show how much they were. I guess an allowance or a payment or a dowry, I guess you could call it. They were given, did they?
No, I don't think they said anything.
That's interesting.
No, they didn't go into a lot of the history on the show because, of course, time constraints.
Yeah.
They did a little bit. So, the one, I forget, was it the one fellow that Tom Bergeron was talking with in Quebec? I forget his name. His last name was Gagne. Anyway,
Peter.
We were talking about that there was such an imbalance of male to female ratio in Quebec, and it was true. There was a big lack of females in New France at that time. So, um, the King of France, with Quebec, New France being a colony, they always wanted to, have it settled as much as possible because the big threat was the English. And if you were to follow through and read through the history of New France, as you move further in time, it goes to the English, then it goes back to the French, and of course it's always, English, French, English, French, English, French, English. And so, they wanted their colonies, to be settled as much as possible with people. And there was married couples were given an allowance for the number of children that they had. So they were given monetary, rewards, incentives to have lots of children. So they said in the show, Who Do You Think You Are? When the ship came in, now this is what we were told in history, and it's probably true. You can imagine, all these men hacking it out in the wilderness of New France, and there's no women around, and they're kind of lonely. And they get word that there's a ship coming in that's loaded with women. Now, full well when they saw that ship coming in, that they would be running down to the docks. Right, for when that ship pulled into port. And I don't think that Monsieur Garnier was, making any sort of exaggeration when he said the women had their choice of men when they got off the ship. They really did, because, it was, again, supply and demand. So in this instance, with Marguerite Orleans, she pretty well had it made, and who she wanted to pick for her husband. And, you would have to probably do a little bit of research to see when her ship, pulled into port and the time that she married Jean Rabillon. It would be interesting to see how much time went by. But she obviously sought out a man who was from the same town she was from and would understand how much that her family had been through, because, his family probably had gone through the same thing as well. Right. And like you were saying, Terry, she was able to make all those demands to make sure that she was going to be set for life. Look at what she'd already been through. Look at what her parents had been through when she was in La Rochelle. She wanted to make sure that with her being in Quebec, that she was not going to have, as much as possible, she was not going to have those problems. And so she made sure she chose somebody who was going to be willing to take care of her and willing to take care of her son from her first marriage until he was 15 and old enough to go and work and support himself.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Oh, and I wanted to say one more thing about the church where Marguerite and Jean Rabillon were married. They didn't show it in this episode, but if you go back and you look at the Bryan Cranston episode, Bryan was in the church.
Oh, I remember the inside.
Yeah, so if you go back, and it's just really short. You see him in there. He kind of looks around and he walks back out. Mm-hmm. That was Notre Dame. That big church with the beautiful stained glass and the big dome roof. That is the church in Quebec City.
Where he was walking down and it was the red in the background?
Yes.
Is that okay? I remember that.
Yeah. So I'm surprised. Well, maybe they didn't show it because they showed it in the previous episode. But that is where Marguerite and Jean were married. If you look at their marriage record, it gives the name of the church. So they were married, even though they didn't live in Quebec City. They lived on Ile de Orleans? I don't know how to say it. Anyway, that little island in the middle of the St. Lawrence.
At the river was what? River St. Lawrence?
Yeah, the St. Lawrence River. Yeah. Okay. And so that's where they got married, and then they settled on Ile de Lorient. I don't know how to say that very well. My English. I
didn't even write that part down.
Very well, and I just have to say I was pulling up the record for my ancestor, and that's where they lived too.
Oh, neighbors.
They were neighbors.
How cool is that?
That area when they went, because it was, well, I made note, about 5 miles out of Quebec, and that was what the historian had said. And so, of course, when he's driving out there, I'm looking at the scenery, and then when the where the names were engraved.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch that statue?
Oh yeah.
It looked like a person standing there, and the arms were trees, family trees.
Yes, it was very cool.
Awesome. Yeah. And then that's where, and down below that was where the engraving, the names were. So.
Well, I have to say the historian in me was happy to see at least a little bit of a discussion about the last siege of La Rochelle, and a little bit of a touch on the, I guess you could even just call it a religious civil war that was going on in France. My husband has Huguenot ancestry, so I know about it from a different perspective, because obviously she converted to Catholicism, which made her escape the Protestant persecution.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, are you guys getting a feedback? I'm getting a feedback.
A little bit.
Do
Do you have two microphones on?
No, but it's
No,
okay.
I have that too. Oh. Yeah, see? Oops.
Give us a second. All right. Well, we're just going to try to muddle through.
Okay.
Double your pleasure, double your fun. I'm sorry.
Oh, Valerie, can dress you up, can't take you out.
But I was happy to see the first-hand account of the siege of La Rochelle, because I personally think having documentation of that for your family can add a lot of flavor and life and background information. And Terry has to stop laughing.
When you said flavor, all like, oh my god.
Well, going to what you, following through with what you're saying, Shannon, with Marguerite converting from Protestantism to Catholicism, it was basically a matter of survival. She had nobody left, because they were talking about, Tom was talking about it with Kevin or Kyle, whoever the historian was, and one would have thought that she would have been taken in by extended family. I don't think there was any extended family left, because during that Civil War, you're talking about a town that went from 20,000 people to 5,000 people. How many, so how much of their family, the Ardians and the Sorés, were wiped out during that Civil War? I don't think there was anybody left. And in order for her to survive, she found somebody. Yeah, he was a poor, illiterate shoemaker, but he was willing to take her on. Why not? I don't think it was that much of a big deal anymore. It was because it came right down to, this is survival. Here's a man who's willing to marry me, willing to take care of me. What's the big deal? I'm going to convert to Catholicism.
Right.
And and really converting to Catholicism in that time and place would have made her life a whole lot easier all the way around. Even if she didn't marry him, even if she remained single, just converting, at that time just would have been a whole lot easier all the way around.
Mm-hmm. Right, but there are some people who didn't.
Correct.
Yeah. The BBC last week had I'm thinking of the actor. He played I Claudius. Older gentleman now. Oh, it's gonna kill me. Anyway, he traced his Huguenot ancestry. And his ancestors did not convert.
Okay.
and became a closet Protestant. Said he was Catholic, but never really converted. And then eventually escaped to England in
Right.
1690.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you were saying, the Huguenots, became persecuted in France. So that's why the big waves migrations during that time, and a lot of them came to North America.
Mhm. Yep, that's what happened to us.
There you go.
Or at least I should say my husband, not me.
Going back to what Terry was saying, and there's her little discovery there that her ancestors were neighbors of, Marguerite and Jean. When you get back far enough in New France, you're going to find that, people are going to be neighbors because you got a small pool of people back then. And, like you said, when your ancestor, she was a fille de roi, when she came over, there was a 10-year span when the fille de roi came. Of course, the earlier, they came over, the earlier you can trace back, the smaller amount of the population was. People are going to be neighbors and relatives. Yeah. Well, that was cool that you made that connection there, Terry.
What was cool is in this guy's story was that he listed like all the prominent people that were at the wedding from some records. I didn't go into all that, but I just thought it was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we have about 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any last thoughts they want to make sure that we cover?
Well,
Do we get double time because there's an echo? Well, in France, when he's with Kevin, and they're looking at the church books and the baptism and the burials and the mortuary records, and then, like you said, when Marguerite converted, she was only 23. And to see the original document, the original book, is so exciting. And it was really intense. I don't know if you caught on. I did. The feeling that they both had, especially Tom Bergeron, was really intense at that moment. And you can also, that was on the 1st of January. Well, she got married on the 12th, so short amount of time later. Days later. When did they actually meet? That was what I would find out. But it was good. There was seven original records that they showed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why they showed less amount of history.
I could see that making room for primary documents.
Correct.
Terry.
I can't help but let Valerie use every word in language there.
Never a dull moment.
You know what? I watched the old original books. And I wish the season was long.
Exactly. When do we have to wait again?
Spring.
Well, but after the first of the year, Finding Your Roots is supposed to start.
No real date.
No real date yet.
Any last thoughts? You're the only one not echoing.
That's okay. I did think that this season of Who Do You Think You Are has really improved. If you look back over the years, I think this season was probably their best season ever. I know it was shorter, but I think the quality of the storylines had greatly improved, and with them showing more of the original records as well. And they got some really good emotional responses from the celebrities this time. And looking through all the reviews that I've seen on Twitter and Facebook, etc., there hasn't been a lot of negative talk about it, and there shouldn't be. I think the producers this time really did a great job on this season, and I'm hoping it'll get renewed for next season, and that they just keep moving forward with some great quality genealogy.
Exactly. It was really, really robust, full, a lot of, the original records, emotions, exactly what you said, Catherine. I think, too, that the best season.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, on that note, why don't we close before people get a headache? Thanks everyone for joining us. It was great talking to you, Catherine and Valerie.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Valerie.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you all.
Now that Who Do You Think You Are is over, we're going to go back to our every other week schedule. I want to let everyone know that we have a bunch of great guests lined up, and we will be back in 2 weeks. So get ready for some interviews and put your learning caps on. And on that note, thank you for joining us. Remember, we love to hear from you. Drop us a line in the comments below. Like us on Facebook or send us an email. And have a great day. Remember to go in depth with all your ancestors. Bye.
Bye-bye.